to learn about another missionary called George Müller. George Müller was a special man in terms of what he did for others. He didn't start out life too well. He was rather naughty at the start of his life, and we'll hear about that. But by the end of his life, he was doing everything that he could to help others and to follow in God's path, okay? So we're going to find out now about George Müller. So please sit back, relax, and listen carefully to this story. It's called, Does Money Grow on Trees? Do you think money grows on trees? Does money grow on trees? A friend asked George Müller one day. You spend so much of it. Perhaps it does. George laughed as he climbed up a nearby apple tree. Germany has the best trees in the world, he declared. Unfortunately, money doesn't grow on any of them. George still spent lots of money though. He spent what he did not have on things that he did not need. And then he stole more money to buy even more things. George even stole money from his father's desk. How naughty. George laughed as he climbed up a nearby tree. Isn't that a great picture? When George's father counted his money, he noticed that some was missing. He didn't trust George, so he looked in the boy's pockets. But there was nothing there. Then he told George to take off his shoes. That was where George had hidden the coins. George's father was very disappointed. His son was a thief. However, George was not sorry for what he had done. He carried on stealing, and finally he was thrown in prison. You can see the picture of George and his father. His father's very disappointed. When George got out of prison, he still did not feel sorry. He did not feel sorry one bit. He kept on cheating and stealing and telling lies to his father. He even stole money from his friends at school. One of George's friends started to read the Bible. Why do you read that book? What are these meetings you go to? George asked. Can I come with you? So I think he was a wee bit curious. And here is a lovely photo. One of George's friends started to read the Bible. The people at the meetings were very happy and friendly. I would love to be just like them, George thought. I'm always wishing for things that I don't have. I keep stealing in order to get them. I pretend I feel great, but I feel really miserable. George listened to someone pray, and then he asked God to forgive him for his sins. George asked Jesus to be his saviour. George's life was changed forever. So because those people were friendly and happy, George wanted to have what they had. Some of George's friends weren't pleased when he became a Christian. He's no fun anymore, they complained. George's father wasn't pleased either. I don't want you to become a missionary, he yelled. I have spent a lot of money on your education. But George did not change his mind. He knew what Jesus wanted him to do. A missionary works for God. I will work for God. God will give me everything I need, George said. I can trust in him. I know I can. George went to England and met a young woman called Mary. They fell in love. Will you marry me? He asked her. She said yes, They both wanted to work for God together. God looked after them. One day there was no food in the house and George had no money. Just then they found some meat and bread had been left on their doorstep. Have you ever had anything left on your doorstep? God gave it to us, exclaimed Mary. We can trust in him. I know we can. George and Mary set up home in Bristol, but soon the disease of cholera spread through the city. Many people died. However, when God took the cholera away, many in the city began to come to church. They wanted to learn about the love of Jesus. George started special schools to teach everyone about how God had sent his only son to save people from their sins. The people longed to hear this really good news. George needed a lot of help to do all that he had to do, but he knew that God was with him. God will give us the money we need, George said. We can trust in him. I know we can. George was right. God always helped them, even when sad times came. They were so upset when their baby boy died, but they knew he was safe with Jesus. They also knew that many children in Bristol had no one to look after them. So George started an orphanage. That's for children with no mummies, no daddies, nobody to look after them. Some people thought he was mad. Where will you get the money? They exclaimed. God will help me, said George. I can trust in him. I know I can. George was right. God gave them all they needed. One lady sent forks, another sent a jug, someone else sent furniture. People sent money, food, clothes and shoes. God made sure that the Müllers got exactly the right things. Soon the first orphanage was ready. But then a second and a third orphanage were needed. Where would they get the money? We can trust in God, George declared. I know we can. George was right. God always helped them. One day, George needed an extra penny for bread. Just then a lady came and gave George 2 whole pennies. When the heating broke down in winter, the builders agreed to work without stopping until it was mended. Just as the builders began to work, the weather changed from winter to spring until the job was done. A little girl ran up to George laughing. Isn't it wonderful? We can trust in God. I know we can. One morning, George saw some orphans playing under an apple tree. Money does not grow on trees, George thought to himself. But I used to behave as if it did. George Müller remembered stealing his father's coins. He was glad that God had taught him a lesson. God taught me to love Jesus and to trust in him for all my needs. Looking after all these children is difficult, but I can trust God to help me. I know I can. And boys and girls and mums and dads, I hope that you know that you can trust in God for everything that you need. Thank you for listening.